Welcome to Real Estate with Brenda K. This is the podcast where we talk about everything and anything to do with your real estate. Today, we're talking about something that comes up often in our market, especially just 15 or 20 minutes outside the city, and that is private wells, cisterns, and rural water systems. Many buyers get very nervous when they hear that a home is not on municipal water, but wells are extremely common in the Halifax area, and understanding how they work from the water table to potable testing to flow, that's all what you need to know for financing. So today we have an expert in this industry, so let's dive right in. Randy Miles, welcome to my new podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. I remember years ago you came on when we had the actual TV show, so I'm pretty excited about this right now. You know, Randy, what I find in Nova Scotia here is like we have properties on wells here that are just like 15 minutes outside the city, maybe 20 minutes. There's so many rural properties. So let's just talk about because people get really nervous on wells.
They do.
But there's no reason to, is there?
No. Where's water come from? It's all the same, whether it's city water or lake water, pond water, well water. It's all coming from the hydrologic cycle.
Yeah.
So where you get your water from and how it's prepared is the main key.
Exactly.
Just making sure you have enough water.
And the quality. So let's talk about the difference, because in the rural properties outside of Halifax, we see drilled wells, and in some cases we see dug wells. What would be the determining factor on whether you're going to dig or drill? Because mainly they drill.
They do. It's location.
Yeah.
Drilled wells obviously are on a different water table than what a dug well would be on. So when you start drilling a well, you're after a different water source. Now, say 100 years ago, it wasn't as common to drill a well because they just didn't have the equipment. So everybody dug a well. You just put a hole in the ground, it filled up with water, and we brought the water in and we used it. But today's health regulations are a little bit different. So some of those wells are now suffering from bacterial issues and things like that.
Yeah. And so I remember, I mean, you've looked after our house for many, many years, and your expertise with our whole system, which we'll talk about. With the dug well, isn't that a lot to do with like surface water, rainwater, and the drill is the deep down under table? There's
actually two sources of water in the ground. You have your upper water table, which is basically water sitting on top of the bedrock, and that's your dug well. Okay, so you dig a well, the water percolates through the soil, fills up the well, and you've got water. But a drilled well, you're dealing with more of the cracks in the bedrock, the aquifers way underground. So that water is a different source because it's been underground a lot longer. It's been through the rock, it's been through the soil, and for the most part, it's a much cleaner water because you don't get a heavy rainstorm causing runoff to run into your dug well, which then after a heavy rainstorm you have dirty water. Well, that can be fixed as well, but these are all things that a drilled well doesn't have because it's on those aquifers and you're getting a steadier rate of water. The water table, the upper water table, can drought itself into not having any water, but drilled wells don't normally suffer the same way in a drought.
Well, look at last summer. Like, remember last summer,
Yes.
like how many people were, I mean, we didn't, we've got lots of water. We're very lucky there. But with the dug wells, look how many people were running out of water last summer.
Yeah, it was a very, very big problem with the dug wells last summer.
And that's another point I want to bring up, the difference between dug and drilled. Because when in real estate, as you know, you've done many, many of them for me over the years, quantity is a big issue. And you do what's called a flow test when someone buys a house. So tell us about that flow test.
Well, you can't really do it on a dug well because it's basically just a pond of water in the ground, and if you start drawing it down, you're taking water away from your neighbors as well. But drilled wells are a different source of water. So what we do there is we actually can measure the flow of water from those aquifers into the well. And to do that, what we'll do is pump the water down in the well and then monitor as it's going down and then again as it's coming back up, and then introduce time, and you can tell how many gallons are entering the well, how many gallons are available in the well. And that is key to really a purchase of a property, because I can fix a lot of things, but I can't fix no water.
Good point. Well, we kind of can.
We're
going to talk about that. Yes. Those are one of the points we're going to bring up today. But that I'm so clear with people when they buy a property, especially like St. Margaret's Bay or Lawrencetown area, where dug wells are prevalent because
Yes.
they're so close to the
Ocean.
The ocean. Elmsdale has a lot of dug wells. Look, you can run out of water. There is a potential. We can't tell you how much is here. You might be calling water trucks in the summer.
Correct.
That's yeah. So that's the one test that we do when it comes to wells, because I want people not to be afraid of. There's a lot of people, like especially they're coming down from Ontario, and they would like this big yard. They would like some of these neighborhoods. I mean, we both live 20 minutes outside the city in a bedroom community, Porter's Lake, but they're really afraid of the wells. So as long as they understand that part. Big one that really is going to affect the bank, because we don't have to, as realtors, we don't have to submit a flow test to the bank.
No, you don't.
But we have to submit the results from the testing you do on potable water. So explain so our viewers understand, what is potable water?
Potable water is water that basically, as the word describes, it's pot. You can put it in a cooking pot and cook with it. So obviously it has to be healthy. It has to be free of certain minerals and as well bacteria when it puts in your pot, although you could boil the bacteria away, but you can't boil anything else out of your water. So for instance, if you have arsenic and you boil it, well, all you're doing is concentrating the arsenic. You're not lowering the amount of arsenic because you've only evaporated water. So everything is relative to what you're looking for.
Yeah. The banks, now they care about bacteria.
Yes.
Which you refer to as coliform.
Coliform.
And that can be fixed.
Yes.
And that's the big one the bank is worried about. But
yes,
potable water under Health Canada is more than just
Correct.
coliform.
Correct. Now, since you mentioned it, it is the banks that are looking for the water test.
Yeah.
If you have money in your bank account and you walk in and you find a house that you love, you can take that money out of your bank account and buy that house. There is no water testing required.
Right, exactly.
However, common sense says before you spend that kind of money, you want to look into it a little bit and make sure that, yes, your well doesn't have some sort of a surface intrusion, because bacteria, coliform and E. coli, both really exist in the upper crust of the earth. For the first 6 feet of the soil, you're going to test positive for those types of bacteria, which is why all dug wells, which rely on that surface water, are going to contain coliform and possibly E. coli.
Tell us, when you say coliform, I understand that's bacteria. What is E. coli, Randy?
Well, coliform is what starts in your mouth. And after it goes through your digestive system and comes out the other end, it is now E. coli.
Oh.
So that's not the kind of bacteria,
animal
waste or human waste. Septic systems can enter into wells. Good. So that's why these tests are performed, to make sure there's no septic intrusion from the neighbor's house. Or I've gone out to people's houses with dug wells and found the dogs tied to the well, because it's a really nice big concrete structure that they can tie the dog to. But isn't that kind of the wrong thinking? The dog's going to lift his leg and do his duty around the well. No. So obviously we steer those people to a different course of where to tie the dog up. Yeah, where's your dog tied up?
That's a good point. So what body in the government in Canada regulates and sets these? Because we're going to talk about the other aspects of potable water. What government body regulates this?
There's actually two. Department of Environment runs the well water industry. So all the well drillers and the diggers of the wells and all of that are really responsible to the Department of Environment. But in some locations on wells that are commercial, restaurants and stuff like that, Department of Health actually gets involved as well to make sure that the water is safe for the consumption.
Yeah. People don't think of commercial places being on a well, but like when I drive, you look after Tim Hortons all the city, all their water. And every time I go around the corner on the new one there in Musquodoboit, and I look over, and all you can see is all those green lids. And that's all their water system, right? Because how could you have enough water for Tim Hortons?
Well, actually, that particular Tim Hortons has a large reserve of water underground, and most of those green lids are all part of the multiple septic systems that they have.
Oh.
The water tank is actually in the middle of the drive-through. You drive over the water tank when you go through the drive-through there. But they have a well, and the well has a low yield. It has, I think 2 gallons a minute at that location. But if you've ever seen a Tim Hortons at morning rush, you're going to use more than 2 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
So the 2 gallons a minute is multiplied by the 1,440 minutes in a day to give you a lot more water available. So what we do then is we take that water from the well regularly. We fill up the holding tank. So he has 3,000 gallons of water in the morning when the rush begins.
Okay.
That's where the water comes from. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are types of systems that can also help residential applications where the well is low yielding, because if you do the math on, say, a half a gallon a minute, well, half a gallon a minute, and there's 1,440 minutes in a day. That means your well could produce you well over 700 gallons of water a day, more than enough.
Right.
The average person is using 50 gallons of water. Sorry, my brain is still in the gallon. That's my
so
age showing.
But
it's actually 50 gallons of water per person per day. So 2 people are going to use 100 gallons of water. Right. So if you got 700 gallons of water coming in for your well, you have a lot of water. You have more than enough.
You're good. You're good. We're going to jump to the storage aspect here coming up. I just want to jump back to the flow rate. So the department, so the viewers know, like they set, this is how much water you need for a family of 4. This is based on the well depth.
Correct.
Right.
Well, it's based on the family and the needs, and then the depth of the well versus the flow rate of the well into the well is what determines where the well driller is going to say, we now have enough water. And CMHC has a chart that is out for the depth of the well versus the flow rate of the water into the well and whether or not it's sufficient.
Yeah.
But sufficient also means storage of water in the well. So you might have a 50-foot well with 1 gallon a minute. Well, 1 gallon a minute is more than enough because we've already talked about how many minutes in a day, but you don't have the storage.
I was going to say, you don't have that reserve, that sitting in there. You just did one for me there the other day, and the house is only a year old, and I had said to you, it was producing 10 gallons a minute when it was first done, and yet you got 7 gallons a minute when you tested it.
Well, that actually, it could be 10 gallons a minute because I only had a 7 gallon a minute pump in the well.
Right.
So I'm pumping 7 gallons a minute out. At some point, you get to a point where the well won't go down anymore.
Yeah, you were so impressed with this well the other day.
So it stops there. You can't. I can't prove that it's any more than 7 gallons a minute without pulling the pump out of the well and putting a bigger pump in. But at 7 gallons a minute, you're never going to run out of water in a residential application. You could run your lawn sprinklers all day long.
Oh, well, remember, you live on Norwood. I used to live on Norwood. My God, I could run the shower, do the wash, run the dishwasher, wash the cars. It was insane the amount of water I had. Let's jump into back to the potable just to say, what are the components now that Environment Canada determines potable water? I know arsenic is one of them.
Yes. The Canadian Drinking Water Guidelines have quite an established list of the metals that are in the water, whether they're heavy or not, that are acceptable and the levels of them that are acceptable. Now, that's based on you drinking 1.5 liters of water a day for 25 years. It's not a short-term drink. You go up to a house that has a little bit of arsenic in it.
Really?
And you drink water with arsenic in it, you're not sent to the hospital. You have to bioaccumulate that arsenic in your bloodstream over a long period of time. So one drink, don't call your doctor and say, I just took this in. Just don't do it every day. Your body can get rid of arsenic, just not as fast as if you're drinking it every day.
When we find it, because it's less than 10, it has to be less than 10.
Yes.
You and I, you put in reverse osmosis systems everywhere.
I believe in them because they are not specific to just arsenic. They're going to take a lot of things out of a lot of water.
Yeah.
So it could be arsenic, uranium, lead. It could be sodium. Sodium reverse osmosis is used very heavily, especially for a lot of properties that we service that are along the ocean. Well, you can't really dig a well if you're on bedrock. There's no soil there to hold the water.
I see.
So then you drill a well, but then if you drill too deep, you get into the saltwater table. So there's some questionable areas that we get into that you have to do some forward thinking and know what you're getting into. Where are you going to get your water from then? Maybe you can get a drilled well that's only 50 feet with 1 gallon a minute, and then you put storage tanks in to collect the water, and that's where you get it from.
Yeah.
And if not, then you could put in cisterns.
Yeah.
Now, I think you wanted to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to jump to that one.
So I'll leave that alone.
That's okay. So potable, so we got arsenic. I know manganese.
Yes.
Is potable.
Manganese is, yes, it actually just became a potable.
I was just going to say they just added that.
There's new medical information determining that manganese interferes with the developing and the declining brain. So they have now changed from having just an acceptable concentration for convenience purposes of 50 micrograms per liter of manganese to anything over 120 is considered bad for your brain if you're drinking it every day. So young children and older folks are the ones who are really affected by that. So yes, manganese is now in there, like all the metals, arsenic and uranium and lead and manganese, and there's a few more of them, but those are the biggies.
Lead's there?
Lead's in there as well at 5 micrograms per liter acceptable.
What about iron?
Iron, it's not unhealthy for your body. So
It just stains your toilets.
yeah, exactly. It's inconvenient. But you go and you take a multivitamin in your kitchen. What are you taking? Look at it. Number one ingredient is usually iron. Right? Iron's not bad for you. And if you can get it down your throat with that taste of iron, because I'm not a real big fan of tasting iron, it's not unhealthy for you, but certainly inconvenient for your laundry, your toilets, and everything else in your house.
Oh my God. Our first house back in the early 80s was down the old farmhouse that David grew up in. I had to put Calgon in every load in my wash to soften enough to clean it, number one. Number two, make sure my wash didn't come out orange. But the inside of my dishwasher a year later was orange.
Yes. That's rust. Yeah.
So
iron.
what type of treatment system, Randy, would you put on for manganese, iron, lead? How would you treat that?
Well, obviously the levels are important, because if it's a small amount, it's easy, but you get into some heavy amounts in Nova Scotia with iron and manganese. I have one manganese customer that has over 10,000, and remember the level is 120 for acceptable.
Oh my goodness.
So that's not a single water conditioner that you put in that can handle that approach.
Yeah.
There's actually 3 machines on that location that are taking the arsenic and the manganese and the iron out of the end product drinking water coming out the tap.
Yeah. And it's important too when you put these systems in, because for bacteria, we find bacteria all the time. Actually, I'm moving into a new house that you just tested for me.
It did positively show, yes.
And their water had bacteria in it.
Yes.
They didn't even know they were drinking it.
No. Again, the coliform that we're talking about that showed up present in that job is available in every warm-blooded mammal's mouth. So as we sit here, we talk, coliform comes out of your mouth with every S and T you make, and it spits over everything, which is how we transfer. I mean, kids do it in school. They yell and scream back and forth, and coliform and E. coli and all kinds of viruses and things get transferred back and forth. But that's basically where the coliform starts at. So it's in your mouth, and you put your fork in your mouth, and you use the rag to clean your kitchen sink, and then next thing you know, you got coliform all over your kitchen. But that's normal life. If you can't live with a little bit of coliform in your life, you might want to get in a bubble.
Now, the bacteria that came out of the well from the home that David and I are buying, that bacteria, because it's a drilled well.
Correct.
There, you went in actually last week and did it for the sellers, because I called them right away and said, look, you're drinking water that has bacteria in it. Was the bacteria generated under the ground in that case, Randy?
Well, not necessarily, no, because like we talked about earlier, after 6 feet, it's pretty void for bacteria. Right. But wells can be a problem, which is why we do the testing on them. It is possible for a bacteria to backtrack or fast track down through the bedrock, get beside the well casing, run down the side of the well casing, and end up in your well, causing a problem with bacteria. Yeah. And if coliform is the first indicator that you'll get, if you get coliform, the Department of Environment considers that to be step number 1 of a big problem. So step number 2 would be E. coli, and then step number 3 would be E. coli strains that can cause problems like E. coli 0157, which is going to be something that can make people very sick and possibly even kill them. Yeah. But coliform used to be acceptable. 1 to 10 used to be an acceptable range for bacteria in a water test for a real estate transaction. Right. But then Walkerton happened, people got sick, and all the rules in Canada changed, and now there is a 0 tolerance for coliform E. coli in water during a real estate transaction.
And we could have shocked the well.
Yes.
We chose not to. I want it. You put in a UV light.
Yes.
Yeah, so
there's no guarantees with shocking the well. We could have done that, and the problem is we can't go in, shock the well, and then take a follow-up water test for your real estate transaction, because we would fail.
Well, and I didn't want to even take a chance. Like, and my husband said to me as soon as it was there, he said, "No," he said, "I'm not going to shock it." And then in 6 months, we find out that
you got a problem.
We got a problem, and then we're putting in the $1,500 system to.
Correct.
Right. So you got reverse osmosis for arsenic. We got water softeners for iron, and then manganese and that, and then we've got the UV light for the bacteria.
Correct.
Okay, so there's the systems.
Yeah, and all those systems have other uses other than the ones you just named, because an ultraviolet light will also kill anything alive in the water, really. It's not, kill is a strong word. It's going to sterilize anything alive in the water. So that's cyst, spores, viruses, and bacteria are all coming out with that unit. So it's a really good unit for peace of mind, because nothing's going to get through that could affect you health-wise from something alive in your water. Right.
Even like there's been times where you've said to me, like ants, or like if you haven't checked your cover in a long time, any kind of insects have gotten in there.
Yep. And drilled wells are susceptible to that. The caps that are now present on wells, you see them have vents in the front that are insect proof. Because if an insect crawls up into the top of your well, he lives there, he dies, he falls in, he carries all the bacteria with him. So that's where it's been proven in the past that many well-drilled wells have had problems with water because of the bacterial infection from the insects above it. But a dug well, you're not going to get away from that.
I always say UV light.
You could look at the dug well and there's I've seen frogs swimming around in them, snakes, and it's, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that was the best water you could get. Mm-hmm. Right? People used to put a fish in their well just to help control those things. But at any rate,
we're gonna end off today with what we talked about before, and I really want buyers to understand this, viewers, because it's a big thing. We see cisterns out there. Do not be afraid. Like, I've had buyers. We just had one we sold not too long ago, and the whole house was on a cistern system, and buyers are terrified.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be.
We're putting cisterns in more and more in Nova Scotia lately, especially those water oceanfront properties that are on bedrock that you can't drill a well. Well, you can put a cistern in, which is basically collecting the rainwater off your roof, funneling that down into tanks underground, and you're talking large tanks, 4,000 gallons, 5,000 gallons of water, which would last the average family a couple of months.
Right.
But the rain keeps coming, the snow melts down off your roof, and in those drought situations, you now have the ability to call for a truckload of water, put it into your tanks, and it's yours. Versus putting it in a dug well. You can put water in a dug well. As soon as the water table grabs that back, it's going to lower down to wherever the water table level is. You're throwing water into the ground, and you're helping the ground, but you're not helping your well.
Right.
It'll just run out.
Often, there was one there last year, if you remember, we were close to the ocean there out in East Pepeswick, and it was a low flow well my sellers had. So in there, you don't have to put them in the ground. You put a massive tank in that house.
Yep.
It kind of scared the buyers at first until we explained to them, hey, this is like insurance on your well.
Yeah, and those are kind of different because cistern is rainwater collection. But when you have a low-yielding well, you put in what's called retention. Retention tanks go in the house and retain the water from the wells.
Okay.
Where cisterns are really more rainwater collection.
You know what? I thought it was called a cistern because it was outside. I did. See, that's why you're the water specialist on this show.
That's why.
We had to talk about that. Randy, you know what? We could sit here and talk about water.
We literally could.
All day, and you and I have so many conversations all the time. And I want the viewers, we're running your contact information and that.
Great.
I think the big takeaway here, don't be afraid of a house that's on a well.
Honestly, no. I would prefer a house on a well.
Yeah.
You look at all of the things, and if you really want to do a Google search on chlorine in drinking water, a natural well source is going to be a healthier water source for you, but you have to make sure that all of the conditions of the water's, bacterial, arsenic, uranium,
everything.
All those biggies have to be looked after. And nobody is responsible for well water except the homeowner. If it's a home, obviously, if it's a commercial application, Department of Environment regulates that it's tested 4 times a year, et cetera, et cetera. But on residential, there is no such.
It's up to us. Check your, I know you come every year, you change air filters, you clean it, So Randy, I hope you can come back next season. We're definitely going to keep this podcast going. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and help educate the viewers on wells and water systems.
I look forward to it. And anytime you have a question, call an expert.
I call you.
Absolutely. But anybody, call an expert because you have to know what the levels of the minerals mean in terms of treatment systems that are available. So just don't say, oh, yeah, that's going to cost that much, and then find out that it's more expensive because the numbers are bigger.
Exactly.
Or smaller.
Yeah.
It could be cheaper, right? Sometimes you don't even need to spend money on a problem. And unfortunately, there are companies out there that will say, here's what you need at this water test. But ultimately, if it doesn't cause you a problem, don't buy it.
You don't have to spend the money. So I'm gonna end with that because that's why I work with you. I trust you. You don't sell systems that people don't need.
Absolutely
sales
not.
And your expertise. So thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So as you heard, water is one of the most important parts of any home, whether it's a drilled well, a cistern, lake-drawn system, or a dug well. The key isn't fear. The key is understanding, knowing what potable means, knowing your flow rate, knowing how lenders look at the water system, and knowing that most rural water systems, when properly maintained, they're reliable, they're perfectly normal in our market. So if you're considering a rural property, the right questions make all the difference. And you can see Randy's information floating along the bottom. Reach out to Randy, ask him anything. I'm Brenda K. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, if you're thinking real estate in Halifax, think Brenda K. Cheers.